I'm Robin, your host for today's virtual adoption fair. I'm a Mikaboo volunteer, just like all of the people presenting and producing today's event. Before we begin, let me tell you just a little bit about Mickaboo Companion Bird Rescue. We are a 501c3 nonprofit dedicated to education about the care of companion birds and to their rescue and adoption. We are a virtual, volunteer-based organization with over 300 birds in our care. We have no paid staff and rely on donations to be able to serve the birds, and the vast majority of our expenses are related to their care. Our veterinary bills average $45,000 to $55,000 a month. These costs are so high for a couple of reasons. One, newly arrived birds often require medical attention due to previous neglect, failing health, accidents, injury from other pets, or trauma accrued during time as strays. Two, some of our birds have chronic medical conditions, and those birds tend to remain in foster care or hospice situations for long periods of time. So if you are able to help, please consider donating. I'll provide some information on how to donate to Mikaboo at the end of the event. Now, let's talk for a moment about the adoption and foster process. Though fostering is a volunteer activity and adoption is, we hope, a permanent process, the process to become qualified to do either is still the same. And if you foster, you can adopt your foster bird at any time. First, the timing. Since we are an all-volunteer organization, and because we want to be really careful about the well-being of the birds, the process does take time. It's not as simple as going to the shelter, picking out a dog, and going home with that dog the same day. It takes several weeks to complete the process, and we want to ensure that we get to know you, your situation, review what we learned carefully, and help you make an educated decision about what kind of bird is right for you. Right now, the approval process takes around 8 to 10 weeks, although that varies depending on your own particular situation. If at any point during the process you feel like you haven't heard from us, please do reach out. Sometimes things do drop and the reminders can be really helpful. So let's talk about the process itself. Parrots aren't easy to care for and they require a lot from their human companions, so our adoption process starts with the basic bird care class. We cover behavior, health and well-being, feeding, care, and all sorts of other topics to ensure that our birds are able to thrive in their new homes. We'll touch on topics covered in the class during today's adoption fair to give you an idea. After taking the class, the next step is to fill out the application. Once your application is filled out, you'll move on to the next step of the process, the phone screen. This is an opportunity for us to better understand you, what you're looking for, and your understanding of birds and bird care. This is also a great opportunity for you to ask any questions you might have. The next step is the home visit. Home visits are performed both virtually and in person, and while you're able to state a preference, we can't guarantee your choice due to our limited pool of home visit volunteers. Whether in person or online, the home visit itself is the same. It's not a white glove test, but it's instead a way for us to help you identify potential dangers you might have in your home, find a good place for your cage, and get to meet anyone who might be caring for your bird. We'll want to see where any of the birds will be located, and we'll want to see any birds you currently have, their cages, and any parts of the house where they might happen to be hanging out. Currently, this is the part of the process that takes the longest to reach, so you can expect to wait up to 6 weeks in some cases. Once your home visit is complete, everything is sent off to the approvals board for review. Once you're approved, you'll be put in contact with the species coordinator for your first choice, who can work with you and find a bird or birds that are a good match for you. You'll be able to talk with the foster parent for a bird that you're interested in, meet the bird over Zoom, and potentially meet the bird in person before making a decision. In light of the pandemic, the specific arrangements will vary heavily depending on what you and what the foster home are comfortable with. So let's get to the part that you came for. We're going to be meeting 6 Mickaboo birds who are all seeking their forever homes. In order today, we're going to meet Tansy and Sage, who are 2 peach-faced lovebirds, Skipper, a nanday conure, Roscoe, a red lord Amazon, Circe, a senegal parrot, Aria, a canary. So once we've got all those, we'll introduce each bird and their foster person so you can learn a little bit more about them. As we go, if you do have any questions about any of the birds, please type them into the Q&A tab in Zoom, or if you're watching via Facebook, you can ask by commenting on the video live stream there. That way we can address any questions while we're interviewing the bird and their foster parent. All right. Let's hop over to Shauna, who is going to be showing us a video of Tansy and Sage, 2 peach-faced lovebirds. Hi, Shauna.
Hi, Robin. Yes.
So, what can you tell us about Tansy and Sage?
Well, Tansy and Sage have not been with us for very long. They came to Mikaboo in February of this year. So they're still adjusting and settling in. They were surrendered to us when the owner was unable to care for them any longer. They were kept in a very, very small, um, tiny little travel cage that we wouldn't really recommend keeping two lovebirds in because they can uh, get aggressive towards each other when they're in a really confined space. So now, uh, Tansy and Sage are in a much larger uh, cage that they're much more comfortable in, have more room to move around. They also did not have very many toys, really, so they really didn't even know what to do with toys or make of them when they were given them in their new home. But they're happily starting to learn about those, and they are very bonded with each other.
I was actually
And
just about to ask if they were bonded because they do seem like they're getting along.
very much so. They like to be right there next to each other all the time. And they're approximately 11 to 13 years old. Tansy is the smaller lovebird that you see there that has plucked some of the feathers, and Sage is the other bird that is fully feathered.
Okay, yeah, they look real cute right there.
Yes,
So can you tell us a little bit more about Tansy's plucking? Are they still plucking or is that a historical thing?
um, given that they've only been with us since February, she probably might still be doing that. And what ends up happening when they have been plucking for a long time, because that was something that she came to us already having those feathers missing, is that they damage the feather follicle. So sadly, some of Tansy's feathers may never grow back in. So she might always look like that. But she might get some new feathers growing in. But again, it's they have both been to an avian vet. They were both treated for a couple of infections that they had, but at a recent vet visit, they were both given a clean bill of health, so they're not on any medications, and they're not. Uh, they don't have any special needs for their care.
Okay, that's good to know. Do we know their genders? Are they a male-female pair or?
We do not know. The only way to really know that is to have a DNA test done. And so that has not been done with Tansy and Sage. They might be both females or they might be male female. We do not know 100%.
Okay, so what are they eating actually?
Okay, so they are on a pelleted diet, and the foster mom is doing a wonderful job of trying to introduce them to some fresh foods, fresh veggies and greens for them. So they're getting used to that and starting to become a little more adventurous in what they're eating. But they did already come on they were on a rowdy bush, I believe. So they are used to being on a pelleted diet. Um, they like their, let me see here, sorry about that. They are doing very well with that. She also introduces some dried greens into their diet, just so she can get them used to uh, starting to accept fresh veggies and fruits more. So uh, they're right now doing pretty good on their diets.
Yeah, it looks like there they are eating those dried veggies right now.
Yeah.
That's actually, yeah, once you get them onto the pellets, that I feel like is the hardest part. So that's a nice big step, the fact that they came in with that.
Yes.
Are they tame at all? Do they step up? Are they willing to be on hands, shoulders, or anything like that?
No, they are not. In their prior home, they were not really handled. So they are not hand tamed. They do not like to step up. Hands are still a scary thing to them. But after being in their foster home for a while, they are starting to calm down a little bit and not flutter around in fear when the foster mom comes to the cage. So they're getting used to being around, having the humans around them more, but they do not, at this point in time, want to step up or have any other interaction other than talking to them and seeing them, being near them. They're starting to get used to that a bit, but they do not want to be on you or step up onto a perch.
Still learning to appreciate people, although I'm sure with enough treats, they might be able to be won over, as are all birds in my experience. So I know you mentioned they hadn't really experienced any toys and we're still kind of getting adjusted. Do they have any toys that they like now?
Well, they are, as I mentioned, they're getting used to that, getting used to their toys. And they're becoming a little more adventurous with playing with them. It doesn't appear that they have any specific favorites, but again, they're being a little more adventurous and they're uh, learning to have fun with the things in their cages. So
Still getting used to it, especially considering they've only been here for a couple months.
Yes.
It's a slow process. We did actually have a question from the audience more about generalized lovebird. You said they were, I think you said 11 to 13. How old do lovebirds live to be?
Well, they can live about 20 years. Some, maybe even 30, but that's generally their lifespan.
I actually had another question about lovebirds myself. So you've got these little guys. Are they big talkers? Because I know a lot of people come in, they're looking for birds that are going to mimic. What are their noises like? Are they mimicking people? Are they cheeping? Are they screaming? What kind of noises would you expect from a lovebird?
They do more bird noises than doing any talking. And as far as the loud noise level goes, they're not terribly loud. They can have their times when they're calling out and chattering with each other, which is not a very high volume compared to some of the birds that are pretty loud, we would call them. These guys are not super loud, so they're fairly quiet.
They sound like they'd be quite. I honestly, every time they walk over, I keep thinking that they have a little hula skirt on. Tansy's got a little hula skirt going on.
I was going to bring that out towards the end. She's adorable. Yes, she's like wearing a little tutu or a hula skirt all the time. So yes, that's a very adorable thing about her.
It's super cute. So before we move on to our next bird, do you have any fun stories about these beyond that they're wearing a hula skirt all the time?
Well, one of the things that the foster parent is finding out is that they like to hear music. They like some classical music playing in the background. It's pretty soothing to them, so they like that. They like to go outside. The foster mom keeps them in their cage and rolls it outside to give them baths. So they like doing that. They also will tolerate spray bottle mist in the house if you can't get them outside. So again, that would have to be done safely and make sure that the cage is a sturdy, secure one like they're in now. But those are some fun facts about these two.
Thank you very much, Shauna. All right, we are going to hop over and see our next bird, who is Skipper the nanday conure, who is going to have their foster Sarah speaking. Oh, and he is asleep in his bell.
Hi, Robin. He's not quite asleep, but he's working on it.
He's thinking about it. So what can you tell us about Skipper?
Skipper is a nanday conure. He's about 15 years old, and he was living with a male owner who unfortunately got sick earlier this year and was hospitalized And we were contacted by a friend of the owner because it was becoming clear that the owner's health was deteriorating. So they asked if we would be able to take him in. Unfortunately, the owner did pass away. And so this friend temporarily held Skipper until we were able to come and pick him up. He's about 15 years old, which is not old for a conure, but I do affectionately kind of describe him as sort of an old grumpy guy. He has we are celebrating today. I think this is officially the end of Skipper's quarantine. He just finished 6 weeks here, so it's still relatively early days getting to know him, but there's a few likes and dislikes we've already figured out, and certainly some habits that we've definitely become very familiar with.
Like sitting under bells? Is that his favorite toy right there?
Yes, this is one of Skipper's favorite pastimes. He, as many conures do, he has a great affection for bells, and sitting with a bell on his head as a hat is his favorite way to relax. So you do have to be careful, just a caveat with these jingle bell shaped bells. They can be a little bit dangerous. Skipper has chewed out the ringer from one of these, and you need to be very careful that they don't get their beaks trapped in the piece that remains. So, tube bells are much safer, and I may work over time to transfer Skipper's love of bells to tube ones, which are a bit safer. But in the meantime, he's got his bell hat, and I don't think I can bring myself to deprive him of it completely, because as you can see, it's his happy place.
Oh yeah, that he's having the time of his life right in there.
Oh, he's so happy.
Oh yeah. So what is Skipper's diet like?
Skipper's diet is not too bad. He is on rowdy bush pellets, and he's been accepting those. He takes a medium and the size one down from that. We put a mix of those in his dish. He's a really good eater of rowdy bush pellets. He's just been pigging out on them the whole time we've been setting up in the last hour. He's been scarfing down his breakfast. So that's probably why he's taking a nap right now, because he's got a crop full of rowdy bush and he's pretty content. But yeah, he's pretty good. He also really loves berries and fruits. He's eaten some vegetables. I usually serve veggies around lunchtime, so he hasn't got his serving today yet. But he does show interest and will pick through. He definitely starts with his favorite fruit. So he does love little pieces of orange slices. And he's definitely eaten small chunks of apple. The veggies, it's kind of hit and miss. He'll take one bite out of a green leaf and then throw the rest on the floor.
You said he was an old man, but it sounds like he's a little kid.
I think all parrots are pretty picky when it comes to, if there's enough food abundant, then they will just pick out what they want. So yeah, he does eat fresh produce, which is the good part. And I think with a little bit of work, you could get him to explore more of it.
He's at least willing to try. So is he hand tame or well socialized or anything like that? Does he get along with people really?
He definitely appreciates ambient company, and he will talk to you if you talk to him in the typical nanday squeak. It does feel a bit like he's yelling at you at times, but I think that is a little bit the nanday style. He knows how to step up, and when pushed, he will step up for me, but it's kind of 50-50 whether he'll step up for me or protest and use his beak to tell me no thank you. He's definitely not aggressive, but like all parrots, he's got opinions about what he wants to do and when. And so if he's not in the mood to step up, he'll use his beak to kind of nip your finger or push you away. And you can tell from his body language, he starts reversing away from you. He just doesn't want to step up right now.
Doing quite the squeak and wiggle right now.
If I'm holding a treat in my other hand and I offer my hand as a perch to get to the food, he will step up quite happily. And then you can kind of hold him for a little bit whilst he eats, and then he wants to go back in his cage again. He's not shown that much interest in exploring outside of his cage. He's climbed out of it all of maybe 2 or 3 times. So I think that's something to work on with him, just getting him to not be such a perch potato, move around more. We will transfer him out of this cage. This is the cage that he came in from his past life. The bar gauge in it is really not ideal for conures. It barely meets our cage size recommendations. And so we're going to work on getting more natural shaped perches in there and some more swings and a wider 30-inch cage. So now that his quarantine is over, we can start to transfer him into something that's more of a flight cage space, which hopefully he will make good use of and not just nap under his bells all day, but we'll see.
I'm not sure I would bet against that. We have a question from the audience. Are conures, and I guess Skipper specifically, food motivated?
Oh, I think every pirate on the planet is food motivated. But I would say yes, Skipper is food motivated. One of the times he came out of his cage was when I hadn't quite got 3 bowl holders set up in his cage. It was fairly early on, so I had to remove his pellets in order to put in his fruits and veggies at lunchtime. But I took the pellet bowl and I put it on the table next to his cage so he could still see it, which wasn't deliberate, but that was just where it was. And Skipper was eyeballing it from inside his cage and decided to tentatively climb out and around his cage and then reach out to the table and stretch all the way, elongating his body as long as he could make it to see if he could reach the table and get to his precious pellets instead of having to eat more vegetables. And the fact that he'll step up for you if you're holding a treat, I think suggests he is definitely food motivated. And I think if you did a bit of clicker training with him every day using modest sized treats for 5 minutes a day, you could make leaps and bounds pretty rapidly with him.
We've got actually a whole bunch of questions. How loud are nanday conures? And I will actually clarify, just because they said specifically conures. Conures come in varying volume levels, but they are all various shades of loud. So how is Skipper specifically?
Skipper specifically, as a nanday, he's got a pretty high pitch squeak. You've heard it a couple of times now. He'll have a little moment if someone new walks into the room or talks to him, or if you kind of start changing stuff up in his cage. I was wiping down the perches earlier and he was telling me exactly what he thought of that. So that's a pretty high pitched squeak, which some people find a little bit too ear piercing. It's higher than the squeak of cherry heads or other larger conures. But most of the day he's pretty content to just hang out on his swing. You can see the penthouse suite swing upstairs at the top of his cage there. He likes to climb up there or nap under his bell hat. He's got a couple of palm shredder style toys, which I've had to move so that you can see him right now in the view, that there's a couple of toys which are normally at the front of his cage, and he loves chewing on those. They're half destroyed at this point. We're going to need to replace them, but they're the Planet Pleasure style palm shredder chew toys.
That's fantastic. We want to see those toys getting destroyed.
Yeah. It's his favorite hobby besides the bells. So he's most of the day he makes these tiny little squeaks like he's doing right now, and just chews on his toys and is pretty chill. But he'll have a moment if something spooks him or if he just decides to get vocal because it's time for dinner. And then it's a higher end squeak routine that he has. It's this little rhythmical beep 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 that kind of just goes on and on and on for a few minutes, and then he'll get over it.
How is Skipper with other birds, if you know?
Well, he's been in quarantine here, so we haven't really had any opportunity to explore that. I will be moving him downstairs soon, so maybe we'll be able to update his profile shortly. But that's hard to say.
It definitely seems like he's calling back to someone he can hear.
Yeah, if he makes these kind of beep noises, like beep, like he's doing right now, beep, and if you go beep back at him and then he goes beep back at you and you go beep back at him, it's the closest he does to talking. It's very gravelly and pretty quiet, and then you get the squeaky ones like that.
Oh yeah, and lots of stretches, and his feathers look a little bit ragged. Is he molting right now?
He's been through a really big molt. When he first came here, he had a lot of pin feathers, and he was really I think he has problems getting to his tail. I don't know if you can see, but he's got 2 enormous pin feathers, tail feathers. Yeah,
the big white things.
They're almost entirely unpreened, when he first came here, he had so many pin feathers that when I was setting him up and getting him out of his travel cage, I did hold him in a towel and I worked on a lot of his pin feathers because I thought that would make him feel better. But he, I think, felt slightly like I had invaded his personal space, and was not very happy about me being around for a little while after that. So I am giving him a lot of space now. And as a result, he has stepped up for me a few times unprompted. But it does mean that all those pin feathers are just sitting there. I don't think he can reach them. And at some point, I'd like to get those opened up for him. But I
not as flexible as a spring chicken might be.
No.
So before we move on to our next bird, do you have any fun stories about Skipper?
Well, besides his adorable affection for bell hats, which has already prompted some fan art, which is wonderful and will be part of our upcoming auction next month. He did just unprompted one day. He's very close to my desk up here. And I often sit with the cage door open, just hanging out with him. And unprompted one day, he just decided to fly out of the cage onto my desk, pooped on my keyboard, and then squeaked at me, asking to be picked up and taken back to his cage, all in the space of about a minute. So he knows how to fly, but his motivation to do so is perhaps a little bit more limited than it could be. So
a little bit more spiteful, even.
Exercise might be fun.
All right.
Fun guy.
Thank you very much, Sarah. And we are going to hop over back to Shauna to another video of Roscoe the Red Lord Amazon. So hi again, Shauna. You there, Shauna? All right.
Hold on, here I am.
Oh, there they go.
Sorry about that. Yes, Roscoe is a 22-year-old male red lorried Amazon. He's been with us since about March 2019. And he's probably in his fourth home. His last home, they took him in and had him for about 11 years. And when they noticed that he had a growth on his tongue, they were unable to provide for the medical care that he needed. So they made the loving decision to help him get the care he needed, and they surrendered him to Mikaboo. So that's how he came to us. And he ended up having squamous cell carcinoma, which was treated. He did wonderfully through all of his treatments. He had surgery and he had some other forms of treatment to take care of his cancer. And he has been doing wonderfully since then. They were able to get that under control. He has been he went back for follow-up, and his foster mom was concerned his squamous cell carcinoma might have come back, but it ended up just being a fungal infection that was treated. So it was not his cancer that came back. The other thing about Roscoe is that he does have an overgrown beak, which needs to be trimmed every few months. So he will need to make sure that he has that he's taken back in to make sure that that beak shape is maintained as best as possible.
So some context for those who might not be as familiar with birds. Parrots will generally wear down their beak just through use over time. Generally, you don't really have to file them or trim them or anything like that. But there are some health issues that can cause them to basically overgrow, which does require a vet. You don't want to be doing that at home. The beak is a very, very sensitive thing. So I believe you said he was 22 years old?
22, yes.
How long do Amazons live? I know that's a pretty common question that we get.
Amazons can live to be about 60 to 80 years old.
Oh, wow. So he's just a young guy.
Yes. So he still has quite a few years ahead of him.
Oh, yeah. I'm just watching him in this video playing with his foster. So is he
make known when he likes to, what he likes and what he doesn't like. So that's definitely for sure.
I was going to ask, does he step up?
He will, but it's mostly on his terms. So, but he will step up for you. But again, in typical Amazon fashion, he's very vocal about what he likes and what he doesn't like. So, but he will step up on the foster mom is showing that right here, that he'll climb up onto your shoulder and he wants
Climb directly up onto the camera too.
yeah, he wants to sit there with you and hang out for a while. So, yes.
They sound like quite the character. I was going to ask, what are their diet like?
Well, he is on Harrison's adult lifetime course pellets. He likes the pepper flavored. He also gets a Lefebvre's nutrient cake as a treat. And he is learning to like his fresh foods. So he likes blueberries. He likes red jalapeno peppers.
He likes it spicy, apparently.
He does. And he gets maybe some shelled almonds, a couple of shelled almonds a week. And the foster mom uses them for training and when she wants to get him back in the cage. So that works really well.
A nice little bribe.
Yes, they are.
I will remind people that if you do have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask either in the Q&A tab or in the comments on Facebook, so we can answer them live and get some good real-time answers. So I actually just wanted to ask, I'm seeing a lot of toys in that cage right there, and we saw him playing with the ball earlier. Does Roscoe have a favorite toy?
Yes, he likes his shreddable toys, that he can tear up, and toys. He likes ropes, wood, shreddables. They all like most Amazons like to turn those wood toys into kindling. So he's your typical Amazon in that respect. And he likes his rope perches and the ball. We're not so sure if he just likes to throw that down, if he's a fan of that ball on top of his cage. But
it's the eternal question: are they throwing the ball because they're having fun throwing the ball, or are they throwing the ball because they're not a fan of it?
Exactly.
Oh yeah, they seem like a real character. And are they flighted? We're seeing a lot of wing flapping going on, at least.
He's probably not a great flyer, but he probably is flighted.
Capable but not interested.
Right, more along that line.
Yeah, we see that a lot, especially with birds that were clipped. It basically stops being their go-to thing. And it can take quite some time to get them flying again and interested in flying.
And as you can see in the video, he'd much rather have you come pick him up.
Yeah, well, I mean, if I could have someone escort me around, that would be my first choice too.
Yeah.
We did have a question from the audience. Roscoe has had a lot of health issues, but is he on any medication right now?
He is not on any medications at this time. But again, just as mentioned, he does need to go in to make sure every 2 to 3 months to make sure that beak is trimmed and looking good so that it doesn't interfere with his eating.
Yeah, and it can be a little bit tricky to figure out at first, but there's a lot of good references for how grown is an overgrown beak. I think I heard, and feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, does Roscoe preferred women over men? Is that something?
He seems to really like the ladies, but he's not completely totally opposed to men. The foster mom noted that he tolerated her boyfriend just fine, and his former home noted that he seemed to like to call out to the gardener that used to come around the window, and he would see him. So he's not totally against men, but I think it's just because he's been used to having women caregivers.
So now he's
Probably
gotten
that
used
he
to them.
developed a preference somewhat. And definitely with the as much time as he spent in the vet's offices, he definitely really loved the vet tech ladies there. So
So before we move on and meet our next bird, do you have any fun stories about Roscoe?
yeah, Roscoe is Amazons can be pretty loud. They're very loud on the noise level side. But Roscoe, his mom says he's pretty mellow and he's pretty quiet. But one of the things he does like to do is he likes to have these one-sided conversations sometimes when he does talk. It sounds like it's a phone conversation that he's carrying on by himself that he's heard. So that's kind of a cute thing. If he goes on a car ride, like when he has to go to the vet, he's pretty vocal then too. He'll whistle on occasion, but again, he's pretty quiet for a birdie. I think he he definitely can be a real sweetheart for somebody that will just take good care of him and wants a nice companion.
He sounds like a real sweetheart. All right. Thank you, Shauna. And we are going to hop over to some live video with Circe the Amazon and their foster, Sophie. Hi, Sophie.
Hi, this is Sophie and Circe the Senegal parrot. Thanks for having us.
Looks like we might be having a little bit of just slow down there, but hopefully, oh, yep, there they are finally on screen. So what can you tell me about Circe?
Yeah, she's a Senegal parrot. I say she, but I'm just going to talk over me. I say she, but like with most parrots, I don't know if it's a boy or a girl. You'd have to do a blood draw DNA test, and just haven't bothered to do that. We also don't know how old they are. It's a bit of a mystery, but the vet is guessing. Oh, it's hard to say. Again, you have to kind of do an x-ray and look at the bones to get more of a guess. She's not young, maybe middle-aged or older, perhaps. And I've had her about.
I was going to ask just how old they get to be. Like, we don't know exactly how old they are, but how long does a Senegal live?
Yeah, they can live to be 40 or 50 years. So there's a wide range Circe could be falling into. Hi.
So it's a bit of a mystery going on.
Mm-hmm.
It does seem like they are friendly with you. Are they hand tamed? Do they step up?
Yeah, Circe's my buddy. Do you want to come? Hi.
Yeah, unfortunately, we have
They
limited
really
video.
enjoy spending. Yeah.
Oh, there they are, hanging out on your hand.
Yeah, she really likes to spend time with me and also in proximity near me. Most of the time, she happily steps up when I ask, and then, let's see, maybe she'll prove me wrong. Step down when I ask to, which is important to me. And often, then I'll give her a little goodie, say thank you. I enjoy cooperation. And
So
what
kind of goodie are they getting? What's their treat of choice?
I've got a little mix. And so for goodies that they only get from me, my special thing is I've got a mix of cashews, walnuts. We'll throw in the occasional sunflower seed, but not meant to have too many of those. The occasional bit of peanut, and I break it up into these tiny pieces, like the size of a half a grain of rice, and that's very much that's plenty happy for you. There you go.
So it seems like they are about the same size as Skipper the Nanday, who we just saw a little while ago.
Mm-hmm.
But what is their volume like? We just heard them talking a little bit.
Yeah. I would consider, you're a pretty birdie. I would consider her fairly quiet as far as birds go. She kind of talks at a person talking volume. She loves to make all kinds of beeps and hums and whistles and clicks, and also does human mimicking and talks. And is going to talk over me. Yeah, we've been quiet all this
Apparently, you're a
time.
very pretty birdie.
And also whistle. Yes, you're a pretty birdie. So I'll also say, I want a cookie. Yeah, you want a cookie. Say, hey baby, and what you doing? Hey baby is the favorite to get my attention because it's just too cute.
I mean, it is very cute. So we already talked a little bit about their treats. What is their normal diet like?
Yeah, in the cage for breakfast, I put in a veggie chop, which I pre-make in some ratios, and then I freeze it in an ice cube tray. So it's really easy to pop out a cube at a time and have veggies ready to go. And then from lunch through dinner time, I put bird pellets in the cage. And she's on 2 pellets at the moment. One is the Rowdy Bush pellet, which people already mentioned. And then donated to Mickaboo. She really loves the Kai-Tech oven baked pellets. And I like those both because they don't have any colored dyes in them and no sugar.
Yeah.
You eat those very happily.
So good piece of context for anyone unfamiliar. The ones with the colored dye, the trick is the colored dye doesn't do anything for the parrots. It's primarily for the person going, oh, it's colorful, but it can dye their poop some very interesting shades and make it harder to see if there's anything going on. So
I also live somewhere with a white carpet, and the stains of the colors went onto all the fabrics, the colored too.
That's do we know if they are good with kids?
I have introduced them to a couple kids, and if the child is calm and it's with adult supervision, she's accepting of children. She doesn't have an initial fear or distaste of kids. However, like with most birds, you really have to earn their trust. And unfortunately with Circe, it takes a lot longer to earn trust than it is to lose trust. So with any kids in mind, or adults for that matter, you have to make sure that you don't overdo it and kind of push your love on her and are willing to give her breaks.
Gotta go at her
even
pace.
if you don't do anything mean, go at her pace. Even if you don't do anything mean per se, if you're too pushy and you keep insisting, it'll turn her off.
I mean, that's pretty understandable. Does Circe have a favorite toy? Or are they even a big toy bird? Because we've learned that not every bird is super excited for toys right now.
I think a lot like those other birds mentioned, she didn't know what to do with any toys when I got her. And she's also got, maybe it's a little bit hard to see on camera, but some feather chewing problems. You can see there's 2 good wing feathers, but the rest are missing. And so when I got her, I started right off trying to show her toys and things to do instead of just working on her feathers. And the current favorite is the egg carton.
Oh, egg cartons can make really fun toys.
The other thing that she loves to do is I take even just her regular pellets or seeds and I wrap it up in newspaper, and it makes a little present package. And she loves to tear those open and pull it apart. Whoops. Yep, now. There you go. Want this?
So I know you mentioned that they were chewing their feathers a little bit. Do they have any issues with plucking, or is it just chewing on the feathers, so barbering?
Yeah, no pulling out of the feather, which is a little bit nicer from a skin health perspective. But she does what you call barbering, where she like shreds the follicles. She's molting right now, and she lost some while we were sitting here. So maybe it won't focus, but here's a feather and you can see the end of it is just kind of missing. It should be rounded off, but it's all frayed at the ends.
Yeah. We probably can't see it. Unfortunately, your bandwidth is pretty low, so we are getting a little bit of stuttering going on, but your audio is coming through at least loud and clear. I did actually just want to give some context that barbering often happens when birds are in too small environments, aren't given enough mental stimulation, and it is something that it can become a bit of a habit, but it will generally lessen when they are given stimulation, like all of those foraging toys, the egg cartons, and just interaction with people in general. Yeah, they look super excited to be interacting with people right now. So I'm not excited by that.
Yeah.
Yeah, they seem like a sweetheart. So do you have, before we move on to our next bird, do you have any fun stories about them?
Well, aside from all the very cute vocalizations, Circe cannot fly because her wing feathers are too short right now. But when she wants to move somewhere, she'll, maybe I trained this on purpose, accidentally, I mean, or maybe that was what she was trying to communicate, but she'll stand on her perch and she'll flap her wings vigorously and I'll come over to see what's up and I'll pick her up and then she'll kind of lean on your hand like a segue in the direction she wants to go and flap the whole way. And I indulge and I take her there. I ask her to do so much to me so I can do her a favor or two. And then when she wants to get off of my shoulder, she'll start flapping and I'll be like, okay, and I'll pick her up and I'll move her where she wants to be next. And I think that's so sweet.
You are her own personal taxi service. One thing that I actually just realized, did we cover how they came to Mikaboo? Did she get dropped off, surrendered, found as a stray? I know we don't know their age.
Yeah. I went and picked them up from somebody who had them and was willing to surrender it as a foster. I don't know how many owners there been. The person I got them from was kind of a middleman who hadn't had them very long, and they had gotten the bird from someone who'd willingly surrendered it. And I don't know why, they wouldn't tell me. So it's all a bit of a mystery in the past.
Unfortunately, that is pretty common with Mickaboo birds. They often end up in multiple homes. They are passed around from person to person because people aren't always prepared to deal with like the needs of a companion bird. All right, so we are going to move over to our next bird. So thank you very much, Sophie. And now we are going to see a video of Aria the Canary, and we are going to talk to Pam. Hi, Pam.
Hey, good morning.
So what can you tell us about Aria, who is on the screen right now on the video?
Aria is having a good time with a sprig of millet that is behind her and blocking your view of it. So she's getting a bit of a treat for being such a good bird on video. Aria came to Mikaboo as part of what I'm going to call an aviary rescue. And I'm going to qualify that because we tend to think of aviaries as large structures that are fairly well built, predator proof, etc. And that was not exactly the case with Aria. Aria and a flock of many other birds, I want to say somewhere around the 70s, were the property of a lady who, as time went on, got old, as the best of us do, and got to a point where she was no longer able to care for herself and in fact passed away. And therefore the birds were left to fend for themselves. Unfortunately, a neighbor was able to access the property, care for the birds while she contacted Mikaboo to get them into a better long-term place. The rescuers who went in noted that the structures in which the birds were held were not well built, did not protect the flock particularly well. So they weren't mosquito proof, for example, they weren't predator proof, and many of the canaries in that particular rescue perished or were tested positive for many sorts of canary diseases, be it canary pox or the like. Aria is a survivor of that particular flock, so she's clearly not succumbed to that disease. However, she is a carrier, and therefore, when she is rehomed, should not go to a home that has other canaries to which she might transmit the various pathogens that she is carrying.
So is it just canaries? Could they go to a home with that has parrots, for example?
Yes, she should be okay with other non-canary birds. And the main method of transmission is somewhat physical. So it's not airborne per se, but if she were to regurgitate to another bird, or if the other bird had contact with her droppings, that idea, shared the same water bowl, that would be more of a source of concern. And of course, canaries tend to be housed with other canaries. And so that's why we have the thought around not housing Aria with another canary or canaries that may be given the diseases that she is carrying in her body.
Yeah, I was actually about to ask that, because generally with canaries, with finches, with most of our small birds, we do want them to be adopted in at least pairs. So is that not a thing with Aria then?
Yeah, with Aria, the thought that we have is that she would be a great office companion. So lots of ambient attention from a human, someone that she can sing to, because she was named precisely because of her song, even though she's a girl. So,
Yeah, I was told that only males sing.
and that arguably the males might have a brighter sound, but that's the thought of only the males sing is a generalization, and there's always going to be exceptions. And Aria is one of those wonderful exceptions. I mean, for me, because she's in a part of the house that I don't frequent, given the number of birds in my home, she tends to sing when I'm not there. But I can hear her from the other side of the house. She's loud enough for the sound to penetrate. But given the kind of sound that it is, it's not, obnoxious, at all. It's actually fairly joyful.
We actually had someone from the audience who asked, could they live with another infected canary or finch if someone had one?
We would want to talk to our avian vets, because the word infected is a bit broad, and infected with what would be the other interesting question. Aria is also potentially a bit aggressive. Females tend to be that because they're defending their territory. So we would want that situation to be monitored carefully, even after we got permission to attempt the pairing.
All right, so sounds like Aria might be a good solo bird, but multiple birds is potential with some vet oversight. I actually wanted to ask, just because I'm sure this will come up, because when someone says canaries, people think these little yellow things. So is Aria like a different species of canary, or is it just a coloring thing? Are they secretly a finch in disguise?
I mean, to your point, canaries are bred for many different things. There are canaries that are bred specifically to sing, and there are singing competitions you can even find on YouTube. There are other canaries that are bred for their feathers, and there are, again, on Google, you can find interesting configurations of feathers where they are curled up and very strange. So she is a more what I would call naturally colored canary. Still very beautiful. If we get far enough, there's a set of videos here where there's a pretty good close-up, but she's got beautiful shades of brown and off-white. And the other interesting thing about canaries and their feathers, I remember when I first fostered my first canary, is when I went and saw it was sleeping, you couldn't find its head because everything was all poofed up. It was almost exactly like a round feather ball. And of course, the head is tucked back in the feathers. And it was just the cutest, darndest thing.
Just oops, no head. So canaries are a little bit different from the larger parrots that we have been seeing. What is her diet like?
She loves the Harrison superfine pellets. And in fact, because canaries and finches are such high energy, you can get the high potency pellets, and which they're called high potency because they have a higher fat content on them, and use them in their diet. They'll also be okay with the adult lifetime diet as well. You also saw early on in the video where she appreciates her millet, like most smaller birds do. The veggies and fruits is a little bit of a hit or miss. She tends to want to have the fruit opened enough where the skin is broken and she can get to the juice more easily. So like a grape, appreciates the grape being sliced and available to her that way, as opposed to, oh gosh, I need to actually work at getting through the skin.
She's dainty. She wants you to prepare the fruit for her.
Yes, exactly.
Just another reminder for people, if you do have any questions, feel free to ask them in the Q&A, whether they be about Aria specifically or about canaries in general, because canaries are a little bit unusual compared to a lot of the other birds. They have their own unique stuff. And we will also be doing a Q&A with everyone else. So if you have questions about any of the other birds, again, please don't hesitate to ask about that either. I did want to ask a little bit about the toys because I see a shredder in the middle there. Does she like to play with that at all? Or is it a sometimes toy?
So canaries are one of those birds where if you reference the toy that is to her left that has the blue and yellow coloring with a bunch of hanging down from it, canaries will tend to like to chew on the stuff that's hanging down. They're not the kind of bird that wants to necessarily destroy the parts that are whole. And they want to go after the hanging ones because if they work at it enough, they think that they can actually make a nest out of it, and they tend to not actually succeed in doing so. So she likes fussing around with the hanging ends. There is a toy that is down below that has rotating pieces that she will now and again sort of poke at and make rotate. Same with the ball that is at the upper left, and make that turn around. It's got some jingles in it. But her favorite activity is actually the bouncing around that you're seeing her do.
Exploring the cage. And with a canary and finch, you actually do want a surprisingly large cage. A lot of people kind of get this idea of the small dome-shaped one. But they actually do need larger cages. You want to give them space to do that bouncing around because they tend to actually hop fly, I guess, from perch to perch.
Exactly. And they also tend to be the kind of bird that isn't let out of their cages, and as opposed to parakeets or the other birds that we saw earlier today. They tend to live their life entirely within the confines of their cage. So you want it to be as big as you can afford and have the space for.
That sounds good. So before we go, do you have any fun stories about Aria?
So Aria, came from that aviary situation with a bunch of the other birds and has adapted amazingly well to life as more of a solo bird, as you can see here. Again, just amazing song, just like her name implies, and just a truly delightful, low maintenance bird.
Oh yeah, and there you're getting a really nice view of the coloring on her tail and sides and the edges of her wings.
Yeah,
that is some very nice coloring. All right, so we are going to wrap up here. Thank you very much, Pam. And that is all the birds we have for today's virtual adoption fair. We do have time for more questions. So if you have any questions, please let us know via the Q&A tab. We will leave it open through the end of the credit video. And if anyone still has any continuing questions, we'll leave it open past then. So if you fell in love with one of the birds, please reach out and contact us. If you haven't started the adoption process, you can get started by signing up for our basic bird care class at Mikaboo.org under the classes tab, and we offer it every 2 weeks. If nobody here seemed like the right bird, feel free to take a look at the others on our website at, again, Mikaboo.org. There are a lot more birds who need their forever homes. So just a few more things before we sign off. First, thank you for attending the June edition of Mikaboo's Virtual Adoption Fair. We hold these every month. The next one's going to be held on July 25th. You can see the adoption fairs and all other Mikaboo events on the event page of our website. Second, please remember that we are a donation-funded nonprofit. You can support the work of Parrot Rescue, including the care for all the birds you met today, at mikaboo.org/donate. We'd be really grateful for your support. Third, if you have any ideas or comments on how we can improve for next time, please mention them in the Q&A tab or send us an email. If you are registered via Zoom, you will also get a follow-up email after the fact. We are always looking to improve these, to improve the format, to get more birds in, to make sure that we have the type of birds that you guys want to see. Last but not least, I'd really like to extend a huge thank you to our foster parents and their birds for being brave enough to come on video, and to other volunteers who provided technical support and kept this event running smoothly. Please stick with us through the credits to see who they all were. We're also going to keep monitoring the Q&A for a bit longer, so if you have any questions that haven't been answered yet, please don't hesitate to ask. And now, roll credits.